Before it was America's oldest mystery, it was a father's broken promise. The story of the Lost Colony of Roanoke does not begin with its disappearance. It begins with the hope of a new world, a hope embodied in the face of a single child, and the man who was forced to leave her behind. That man was John White, an artist, a governor, and a grandfather. And for the rest of his life, he would be haunted by a single word carved into a tree. In the summer of 1587, the coast of North Carolina felt like the edge of creation, a new Eden. This was not just another military outpost or a camp for explorers. This was to be a permanent English settlement, the city of Raleigh in Virginia. For the first time, it was built not just with soldiers and adventurers, but with families. 117 men, women, and children crossed the vast Atlantic to plant the English flag and their own roots in the soil of the New World. John White was their governor, but his stake was more than political. His own daughter, Eleanor, was with him, pregnant with his first grandchild. On August 18, 1587, she gave birth to a daughter, Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the Americas. In that moment, the colony was no longer just a venture, it was a legacy. Virginia was the future, a living symbol of their courage. But the new Eden quickly revealed its thorns. The colony was planted too late in the season for a proper harvest. Their supplies, meant to last a year, were dwindling at an alarming rate. And their relationship with the local Algonquian tribes, which had begun with a cautious curiosity brokered by their native allies Manteo and Wanchese, was fraying. A misunderstanding had led to violence, and now the settlers felt the eyes of the forest watching them with a new hostility. The dream was turning into a waking nightmare. They were isolated, thousands of miles from home, with winter approaching. A decision was made. Someone had to go back. Someone had to sail back to England to plead their case for more supplies, more support. The colonists chose their governor. John White, by his own account, refused. He wrote that he was very loath to leave them. How could he abandon his post, his people, his own family? He had just held his granddaughter in his arms. But the settlers insisted. He was the only one with the connections and the influence to secure a relief fleet. They made him a promise. They would look after one another. And he made them a promise in return. He would be back as soon as possible, by the following spring. They agreed on a secret signal in case they were forced to move. They would carve the name of their new location into a tree. If they were in danger, they would carve a Maltese cross above the name. With a heavy heart, holding the image of his daughter and the face of the infant Virginia in his mind, John White sailed away, leaving 117 souls on that fragile shore, trusting in a promise he was desperate to keep. He had no way of knowing that he would never see any of them again, and that his one-year journey would turn into 3 years of agonizing silence. The winds of fate are cruel. John White's journey for supplies turned into a prison of circumstance. When he arrived in England, he found not a country ready to help, but a nation bracing for war. King Philip II of Spain was assembling a massive fleet, the Spanish Armada, to invade England and depose Queen Elizabeth I. Every seaworthy vessel, every able-bodied sailor, every barrel of gunpowder was requisitioned for the defense of the realm. The fledgling colony of Roanoke was an afterthought, a whisper lost in the thunder of war drums. White's pleas were drowned out. He tried desperately to get a ship, even managing to secure 2 small vessels, but they were ill-equipped, and their crews, more interested in piracy than rescue, abandoned the mission. For 3 long years, John White was trapped, a governor in exile, while his colony, his daughter, and his granddaughter faced the unknown, alone. Finally, in 1590, after the Armada had been defeated and England was safe, White managed to secure passage, not on a dedicated relief mission, but by hiring himself out to a privateering expedition bound for the West Indies, who agreed to stop at Roanoke on their way. On the night of August 17th, the eve of his granddaughter's 3rd birthday, his ship anchored off the coast. The wait was over. He and his men rowed towards the shore, their hearts pounding. He wrote of the anticipation, seeing a great smoke rising from the island. Was it a signal? A watchfire? They shouted, they blew trumpets, they sang familiar English songs, hoping for an answer from the darkness. The answer was silence, a deep, profound, and terrifying silence. As they landed at dawn, the full horror began to reveal itself. The settlement was gone, not destroyed, but vanished. The houses had been dismantled, not burned. The defensive palisade, a sturdy wall of tree trunks they had built, was still standing, strong and intact. But the small village within it was empty. Overgrown with weeds and vines, it was as if the forest was already reclaiming what it had lost. He found pieces of iron, lead, and other heavy objects scattered about, but no people, no bones, no signs of a struggle or a battle. This was not the scene of a massacre. It was something stranger, something more unsettling. It was the scene of an evacuation, a place that had been methodically and deliberately abandoned. His mind raced. Had they sailed for England on their own? Had they starved? He searched desperately for the sign, the secret signal they had agreed upon 3 years earlier. And then he found it. Carved into one of the main posts of the palisade, in clear Roman letters, was a single word: Croatoan. Hope surged through him, a desperate, powerful wave. Croatoan was the name of a nearby island, now known as Hatteras Island, the home of their ally Manteo and the friendly Croatoan tribe. This was the sign. This was the message. They had moved. And crucially, there was no Maltese cross carved above it. They were not in distress when they left. A relief so immense it almost brought him to his knees, washed over him. They were alive. They were just somewhere else. He had to get to them. But the Atlantic, which had kept them from them for so long, had one last cruel trick to play. A powerful storm, a classic Outer Banks hurricane, began to brew. The wind howled, the sea churned, and the ship's anchor cable snapped, nearly driving them onto the shore. The captain, his ship damaged, and his crew on the verge of mutiny, made his decision. They could not risk the treacherous shoals around Croatoan Island in this weather. The search was over. They would sail south for the Caribbean and return to England. John White protested. He begged. He pleaded. He was so close. The answer to his 3-year nightmare was just a few miles away, across a stormy channel of water. But it was no use. He was forced to turn his back on that shore, on that enigmatic word, and on his family, for the last time.
A man can live the rest of his life in a single moment of regret. For John White, that moment was the storm that forced him from the coast of North Carolina. He never set foot in the New World again. He returned to England a broken man, his governorship a failure, his family lost not to violence, but to a mystery he was forbidden to solve. His life became a long, quiet haunting. The official records show that he tried to go back. He wrote letters, he petitioned Sir Walter Raleigh, he tried to fund another expedition. But the investors had lost their appetite for the venture. Roanoke was a failure, a financial loss. The human cost was his alone to bear. He eventually retired to a home in Ireland, where he dedicated his final years to writing down his account of the voyages, preserving the story for a history that he felt had already forgotten it. He drew maps of the Virginia coast from memory, his artist's hand tracing the shorelines of a world that held his heart captive. He was physically in Ireland, but his soul remained forever on that empty beach, staring at a word carved into a post. What did Croatoan mean? For John White, it must have been a mantra of hope that slowly curdled into a torment. In his mind, he would have replayed the possibilities endlessly. The most logical one, the one he clung to, was that the colonists, running low on supplies and facing hostility, had peacefully integrated with their allies, the Croatoan people. It was a comforting thought, a merger of two cultures, a story of survival, not loss. Later reports from other explorers over the next few decades seemed to support this. There were sightings of natives with gray eyes, a knowledge of the English language, and stories of a lost tribe of white people who had been adopted. For John White, hearing these rumors secondhand would have been both a blessing and a curse, a flicker of hope that his family had survived, but a pain that he could never reach them, never know for sure. Other, darker theories would have crept into his mind in the dead of night. Could the word have been a warning? Could the Croatoan, once friendly, have turned on them? Or could it have been a misdirection, carved by another, more hostile tribe after a massacre? Without the Maltese cross, it seemed unlikely, but after 3 years, could he be sure the plan was even remembered? Could they have tried to sail home in a small boat and been lost to the sea? Each theory was a ghost, and none could be laid to rest. John White died around 1606, never knowing the fate of his daughter, his granddaughter, and the other 115 souls he had led into the wilderness. He left behind a handful of beautiful watercolor paintings of the New World, and a written account filled with a quiet, heartbreaking longing. He left behind a mystery that has endured for over 400 years, a mystery that has become a cornerstone of American folklore. But he did not intend to create a legend. He was just a man trying to find his family. The colony was lost, but the story was found. It speaks to our deepest fears of the unknown, of being erased without a trace. The silence of Roanoke is what makes it so powerful. It's a void that we have filled with countless theories, but it can never be truly filled. The truth, whatever it may be, belongs to the people who vanished, and to the man who spent the rest of his life searching for them, haunted by the hope and the horror of a single cryptic word. A story without an ending can haunt us forever. What do you believe happened to the lost colony of Roanoke? Share your own theory in the comments below. And if you believe that history's greatest power lies in its unanswered questions, consider subscribing to join us on our journey into the mystery.